They say time heals all wounds, but no one ever tells you what to do with the silence left behind. In a quiet coastal town where the sea never stops whispering, there stood a yellow house with peeling paint and a piano that hadn't been played in 15 years. Not since Anna left, not since the accident, not since music became too loud for a heart shattered by grief. But healing, like music, often begins in silence. This is the story of a family, of what was broken, what remained, and what was slowly, quietly put back together. It's about love that didn't know how to speak, and a daughter brave enough to listen anyway. It began with a letter. When the piano played again, Sarah found it tucked between old recipe books in her mother's kitchen. The envelope yellowed with time sealed but never sent. To Anna it read in her father's handwriting. She stared at it for a long time, heart pounding like footsteps in a hollow hallway. Her father hadn't spoken about Anna in years. Neither had her mother. The accident had taken more than a sister. It had taken music light and the ease of Sunday mornings. The letter trembled in her hands as she sat at the old oak table, the same place where Anna used to braid her hair before school. Sarah didn't open it, not yet. Instead, she walked to the living room. The piano stood under the window, silent and untouched, a monument to what once was. Dust coated the keys like memories, thick and undisturbed. She sat. Then slowly she pressed one key. The note rang out fragile, hesitant, but clear. She didn't cry, not yet. But something had shifted. The piano had played again. The sound of the single note lingered in the room, like perfume faint, fleeting, but impossible to ignore. That night, Sarah lay awake, the envelope still unopened on her nightstand. The wind pushed gently against the windows, and somewhere in the house, an old floorboard creaked like footsteps from another time. She thought about her father, once a vibrant man with calloused hands and a laugh that filled rooms. He had grown quiet since Anna. The joy that once spilled into Sunday pancakes and humming while folding laundry had vanished. All that remained were sighs, closed doors, and a silence too loud to name. The next morning, Sarah returned to the piano. She wiped the keys with the sleeve of her sweater, then played 3 more notes. They wobbled, but they were music. Her mother, who had been silent in the kitchen, appeared in the doorway. She didn't speak, just leaned there, eyes glistening. "Is it okay?" Sarah asked. Her mother nodded, voice trembling. "It's more than okay." It was a beginning, small, but beginnings often are, and the house, long grieving, began to breathe again. The following days unfolded like pages from a forgotten melody, gentle, familiar, but not without tension. Sarah played the piano each morning, sometimes just a few scales, sometimes a tune she barely remembered. The sound drifted through the house, awakening corners left untouched for years. Her mother lingered nearby, more often now humming softly to herself, sometimes wiping the same counter twice. But her father remained a ghost. He spent his days in the garden or the garage, avoiding eye contact, meals, and music. Once Sarah saw him pause at the doorway as she played his shadow, long and still, but he never stepped inside. One evening she opened the letter. It was short. "My Anna, I should have driven you. I told you to go without me, and you did. I've carried that choice for 15 years. I don't know how to ask for forgiveness, but I hope this letter finds its way to wherever you are. I miss your music. Love, Dad." Tears blurred the ink as Sarah folded the paper. In that moment, she didn't just mourn Anna, she mourned the words left unsaid. Between her parents, the guilt they had both carried like a second skin. And for the first time in years, she played Anna's favorite song. That night, the music didn't stop with Sarah. Her mother sat beside her afterward, hands trembling on her lap, but smiling a smile that had not surfaced in years. Outside, the sound had reached the garden. Her father stood in the dark, half-finished tools beside him listening. He didn't move, but he didn't turn away either. The next morning, Sarah woke to an unfamiliar sound metal on rust. She peeked outside. The old garage door was open. Her father, still in his flannel shirt and worn boots, was lifting out the dusty bench Anna used to sit on when she watched him fix things. He wiped it clean. He placed it in the backyard under the sycamore tree, and then he went inside. At dinner that evening, he sat at the table, not silent, not distant. He looked at Sarah and asked quietly, "Will you play it again tonight?" She nodded. "Only if you listen." And he did. That night, 3 chairs sat by the piano. Only 2 were filled, but the third, always Anna's, was no longer empty. It held the space where healing had begun. Weeks passed, and the yellow house seemed to shift in color, as if light had found its way through every window pane. Sarah's morning music became routine, a sound that blended with the sea breeze and bird song. Then came her mother's birthday. Sarah spent the morning baking the old lemon cake Anna used to love. She found the recipe card in the same drawer where the letter had been, a fragile piece of paper stained with vanilla and thyme. At dinner, her father brought in a bouquet of wildflowers. Awkward in his hands, but carefully chosen. No one mentioned the previous years they hadn't celebrated. They just lit candles. When the plates were cleared, Sarah sat at the piano. She played the birthday song, not just the cheerful version sung at parties, but the quiet melody Anna had composed when they were children, tender, slow, and full of love. As the final note faded, her father whispered, "She would have played it better." Sarah smiled, "But I'm glad I got to try." And in that moment, for the first time in a long while, laughter returned to the house, not as a stranger, but as someone who had always been welcome. One breezy afternoon in late spring, as sunlight danced on the porch railings and the smell of lemon cake still clung to the curtains, the doorbell rang. Sarah opened the door to find a woman around her age holding a small duffel bag and a letter. Her name was Elise. I think I'm your cousin," she said. Sarah blinked. "I'm sorry." Elise explained her mother had been Anna's closest friend. After the accident, she'd moved away and never returned. But Anna had written letters, many of them, and one never sent mentioned Sarah the piano and a house by the sea. Sarah invited her in. That evening, Elise sat beside Sarah at the piano bench. They played a simple duet Anna had written when they were kids. Elise remembered it by heart. The music filled the yellow house again, but this time it didn't echo sorrow. It welcomed new stories, and in that the healing grew deeper, branching quietly like roots through old wood, bringing strength to what remained. One rainy morning, Sarah wandered into the attic, a place untouched for years, where dust painted everything in soft gray. She wasn't searching for anything in particular, but as the rain tapped gently on the rooftop, she found an old wooden box beneath a faded quilt. Inside were Anna's music notebooks, dozens of them. Some were filled with full compositions, others with fragments, unfinished melodies, and scribbled thoughts. Sarah flipped through the pages, running her fingers over the indentations of notes written long ago. She found a song titled "When the Rain Pauses," the notes hesitant, unresolved. Like Anna had been trying to say something and hadn't found the words. That evening, she brought the notebook downstairs. With Elise beside her and her parents listening from the hall, Sarah began to play. Slowly, patiently, carefully. She filled in the blanks. She wrote the ending. And for the first time, the house didn't just echo with memory. It resonated with something new. Summer came with long days and warm nights. By then, Sarah had restored many of Anna's songs, adding her own voice where her sisters had left off. Elise helped her catalog the music, and together they created a small program, an evening recital in the town's old chapel. Once where Anna played her very first solo. Flyers went up. Neighbors remembered. Curiosity turned into support. On the night of the recital, the chapel glowed with candlelight. The piano, recently tuned, polished, stood at the front like an altar. Sarah stepped forward, hands shaking, heart wide open. Her parents sat in the front row, Elise beside them. The yellow house was quiet for the first time in weeks. Sarah took a breath. Then she played. Not just Anna's songs, not just her own. She played the music of a home, learning how to forgive itself. And when the final note rang out, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was whole. In the days that followed the recital, something quiet but profound settled over the yellow house. The piano was no longer just a symbol of grief. It had become a voice for memory connection and rebirth. Each time Sarah sat at the bench, she wasn't playing alone. She was continuing a conversation. Across time between the sisters, between generations. The family began to speak more freely about Anna, about the past, about the ache that once divided them, and the music that now bound them. Letters once tucked away were now shared. Recipes were passed down. Melodies hummed while windows were opened to let in the sea air. One evening, as the sun spilled gold across the porch and laughter echoed from the kitchen, Sarah sat down and wrote her own letter. To Anna, "Your music never left us. It only waited until we were ready to listen again. We're listening now. With love, Sarah." She placed the letter beside the piano, not as an ending, but as a beginning.